Welcome back to the Exploring Growth podcast. Today I had the luxury of talking with Amanda Brand, Vice President at MINDSCAPE, which is a digital marketing agency. And we talked about all things business development. We broke down her whole approach about how she approaches new prospects and turning them into clients. And then that customer success part of it, which is a lot of times people can, especially agencies, can drop the ball on. So be really interesting to see. If you listen to this, lots to learn. We're back exploring growth. I have Amanda Brand here. Excited to talk with you. Thanks for being a part of the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I'm going to have Amanda kind of do a quick introduction to herself. But first, how did we get introduced? I had Dan Tyre from HubSpot on the podcast many episodes ago. He's a rocket ship, of a guest to have on, which is so much fun. And so I reached out to a couple of my previous guests and said, hey, I want to have more people like yourself. Who else should I have on? And he recommended a few people, and Amanda was one of them. So I'm excited to have her on. I understand you're part of an agency, so I love having, people from agencies on because they have good perspective. I will say that, our target audience here are B2B CEOs, CMOs, VP marketing, people who are, in the thick of building companies for real. They're not part of these like crazy valuations that don't mean anything. And they're not like just starting out. They're like kind of trying to build teams and put systems in place and really do strategy. So, that I love having people like yourself on that work for agencies because there's so much value you can add to that audience. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your role and company you work for.
Yeah. So I'm Amanda Brand. I'm the vice president at MINDSCAPE. And actually, my husband started MINDSCAPE with his business partner, Paul Ferrier, almost 22 years ago now. My background was in healthcare, and I got my degree in education. And then when I went back to school, I got my MBA. And as I was going and applying to the workforce for a job, they had recruited me to come and work for their company. So they originally had an agreement that neither of their significant others could work for the company. So we were together for 18 of those 22 years and never really was on my radar that might be something that I would, want to explore. But having learned so much about the company and learned so much about business, it was a perfect fit for where they were. So it's funny that you mentioned like these have been in business for a while kind of companies looking at growing, like what are next steps? And they were really in a place where they needed to better understand the business, what parts of the business were making them money and what parts weren't, changes in the industry, really how to dissect and understand a P&L statement. And those were all skill sets that I brought to the table, along with I was a professor for 7.5 years. So I had, some public speaking under my belt. I have some curriculum writing. I do a ton of work in the community. So it was a natural fit to come in, and I started doing education and training. And that's actually where I had met Dan. We did a big HubSpot get together in Grand Rapids, and we rented out space at a big brewery in town, and we had Dan come and speak for us. And for us, that was like a big to-do. Tons of people came, and I was in charge of hosting this event. And I had met Dan in that process as he came, and spoke about inbound marketing and, changing your sales approach. And I was just so fired up listening to him speak. And it started to occur to me that sales really isn't what I was imagining sales to be, because I never wanted to be a salesperson. But just through understanding business and understanding how marketing and sales really work together, and that it was very consultative and very much about understanding where people were in their business and how what you had could help them grow. So Dan and I connected there, and then we have just stayed connected since. And that was, over 6 years ago now that we connected. Yeah. And then I ended up going out to Boston and doing sales training with Dan and his team. I really got to know a lot more people at HubSpot and kind of that ecosystem, a bunch of other agencies. And
from what I gather, HubSpot was built off of this amazing sales model. I mean, they obviously did content and inbound like fabulously, but and really kind of created that whole category. But the sales part, I think, doesn't get as much attention as it should, because they really are a powerhouse sales organization.
Yeah, and they do fantastic training, and it's sales training, obviously, that you can implement in any
Hmm.
sector of business for anything. But yeah, they did a phenomenal job. But that's how I met Dan and how I ended up
That's
where I
awesome.
am now. And
Yeah,
so now at
yeah, that's
Mindscape,
awesome.
I was promoted to vice president around the time of the pandemic, and which was
Okay.
interesting. So helping co-lead the company through that, and then also was put in charge of business development, and I run all of the business development for Mindscape, as well as I oversee all the financial side of the business. My
Hmm.
counterpart, who's the president of the company, does all process and procedure for our internal team and make sure that everything that we're doing is on time and on track and efficient, and that we're staying within budgets.
That sounds like a great structure. I mean, if you're handling the financial part of it and working on the production of that revenue, you know, that's a great seat to sit on. You you are accountable to yourself. Basically every day you're like, are we making more money, and is that money good money?
Exactly. I think it's
Yeah,
that second part of, is that money good money, that
yeah.
really is what keeps businesses afloat for the longer period
Hmm.
of time.
Agreed. Yep, it's getting in the highest quality new clients that are going to stick. I was just having this conversation with a colleague of mine the other day about referrals, and that being, referrals are still one of the most important, if not the most important, way that all B2B and even a lot of B2C get their new business. And it should be a priority in people's companies, in their stack of, or in their marketing strategy, in their business development strategy. Um, and I just see that it gets deprioritized. It's sort of like, if you ask any company, how'd you get your last five clients or customers, they'd probably say referral, but they're not doing any like specific referral type of business where you're working with referral partners or affiliates, or going to your clients on a consistent basis and asking them for, referrals if you're doing good work. I don't know why that just came to
I
mind, but
know,
I was,
I feel like we're
yeah,
a little bit guilty of that. We do ask for referrals, but you're
yeah,
100% correct. Like, our
yeah,
referrals are our best clients. It's
yes,
somebody referred you because they already know and love you, and you
hmm,
have been awarded that trust, right? So
hmm,
then, even through the sales cycle, it's so much easier because that trust
hmm,
barrier has already been crossed. Now they're looking
hmm.
at, do you have the things that I need to solve my problem, instead of, do I like you? Are you going to be easy to work with? All the other
That's
things
right.
that they have to figure out before, also, can you solve the problem that they have?
Yeah, it makes me think, if I want to make immediate impact with most of the clients that I come and work with, I just go in and say, okay, before we do anything, let's just call up all your current clients and ask them how it's going, and then ask them for referrals. And you get immediate business out of it, and you learn so much from those conversations, that the impact is great and it's immediate, within the first 30 days or so. And then they love me, because it's like, well, it's like, well, you could have been doing this all along. You didn't really need me, but now we have the
Yeah.
insights and we have the referrals. Now let's start to build off of this. Let's get some momentum going here, but let's not forget about it. I mean, we're all guilty of it. It's the latest greatest marketing tactic. Where can we spend money and waste money? It's like we're good at wasting money on marketing, but we forget about the tried and true word of mouth, someone telling a friend. But yeah, so, well, that's great. I mean, such a great pedigree. I've been through the HubSpot sales process myself, and I think 2015, 16, 17, somewhere in there, I became a HubSpot partner. At the time, we were doing some more of that work in my agency that I have, separate from this. And I can attest to the case study of like walking through that, being sold by them at that time, and still was relatively, I don't know, not new, but relatively young of a company selling, and they were doing all the right things. So, it's like made me want to buy it because they were pushing just hard enough, but not too hard. They were very consultative, all the things. And so I was very impressed by going through that sales process with them. I felt like I was in good hands when I got handed off from, I guess it was the SDR to their account executive.
Yeah, they do a phenomenal job, I think, listening. And not
Yeah.
all salespeople are great at that.
Yes, that is for sure. Yeah, I mean, for businesses listening right now, that's one thing you could take and say, or ask your salespeople, how much of the time do you listen in these appointments? Like, are you actually just listening a lot of the time and trying to gain understanding or insights that you can, then use as leverage to, not in a negative way, but in a positive way to add more value. I find that salespeople are focused on their number, and they they tend to do a lot of talking and not a lot of listening.
When I first started sales, I would take the first call, so it's like Amanda's going to run all the connect calls, those first ones. And I would have like my spreadsheet and my questions and my lists. And
Mm-hmm.
it seemed very robotic. It didn't work
Yeah.
for me. And so I ran, several of those, and I was like, this doesn't feel like I'm building a relationship. It doesn't feel like I'm
Yeah.
listening enough. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
I'm just dominating the conversation and inputting, here's what we do and how we solve that, and here's what we have to
Mm-hmm.
offer to that, instead of really letting the prospect drive the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I do now. I don't show up with a single question, and I go and I look at their website. I have a
Yeah.
good background knowledge so that I can speak to challenges, and I can say, oh yeah, I saw that here, or
Yeah.
it's funny
Well,
that you
so
mentioned that, because I thought the same thing in your user experience, anything
yeah,
that I
right.
can do on my homework side. But I use the silence. I
Mm-hmm.
don't let it scare me anymore, because when it's quiet in the in-between moments is when
Mm-hmm.
they're thinking, and when they're thinking, they're also realizing that she's not pushing me. I'm taking
Yes.
a minute to breathe. What am I actually asking for? And if no one else is doing that in the process of when they're vetting who they want to work with, I think that makes us stand out, because they
You would
feel heard when they
definitely,
get off the call.
for sure. Well, so let's if you wouldn't mind, I'm curious to know your approach, right? So, like, if you could kind of break that down a little bit more for us, I think that would be a super value for people that are listening to hear about how a business development person, that's selling something that is not necessarily a commodity, but there's a lot of competitors in the marketplace. So there's a lot of your clients are going to get calls from these competitors. They have, positive, negative, a lot of negative experience working with agencies. I mean, we've all had these experiences, right? So
I think
you're
everyone I
calling,
talk to has a story, right?
yeah,
So
right. I mean, because there's so many bad actors out there. So, with that as the context, I think it would be great to hear your approach, because I think we're in alignment in terms of how we approach. It's very, very consultative, but break that down for us if you don't mind.
yeah, so I love to understand the business.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is why I wanted to go to school, right, to understand business more.
Mm-hmm.
So typically I'll get like a request to meet with Amanda form, and it'll say, I want to, we need a new website. That's like the biggest thing, right? Like, we're doing marketing and it's just not working. Like, something's wrong with our
Mm-hmm.
website. So I'm like, okay. So I go do my homework, and I'm like, tell me more about that. So they'll start telling me about, I don't like how it looks, or I don't like this form, or I think we need to have a better about us page. And so I'll talk to them about, okay, but what are you hoping is the goal that your website is going to achieve? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if we're thinking about your website as a tool, what is its job? And so kind of reframing how they're looking at it. And then they'll usually say, well, it's to bring leads in so that we can close deals and have more revenue. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like that's perfect. Like that is
Mm-hmm.
a good use of our website. But
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about that. How many leads do you need on your website? How many are you getting? What is your business
Mm-hmm.
goals? What does that growth look like? What are you currently doing? And what
Mm-hmm.
other things do you have in place to support this goal? Because if you build a website, like if you build it, they will come is not a real thing. So
That's
if we're
right.
going to invest, thousands of dollars into a website, we need to have some realistic expectations about what does a website do and what are you
Yes.
actually looking for. So a lot of the times when people think they need a new website, really what they need is maybe a better landing page for whatever their offer is so they can tell their
Mm-hmm.
story better. Maybe what they need is an actual marketing campaign to drive visitors to the website that already exists, because
That's right.
sometimes I'm like, I hate to tell you, but I don't think the website is necessarily the problem, or we don't know yet because you don't have enough data to support that the website's the issue. You're not getting
That's
enough
right.
visitors. So having a much bigger conversation about what are you doing to bring in leads? How are you moving them through the sales funnel? So, yes, the website's a big part of that. What does that
Mm-hmm.
experience look like? But what are you doing with email? What are you doing on social? What are you doing, networking? What are your salespeople doing? What does
Mm-hmm.
it look like from, looking down holistically at your business? Because
Mm-hmm.
this is a big investment. Typically, this is all of your budget for the year. And so,
Yeah.
what is the best way to spend that to support your business goal, not to support this initiative that you originally came to me with? And as I ask
Yeah.
questions, I just listen. I'm like, tell me about that. And then they'll tell me, if I'm talking to marketing, they'll tell me, oh, we get leads in and the salespeople don't close them. Or the
No.
salespeople will say, they're not giving me any leads, so I don't know what else to do. And so,
Yeah.
really, having a toolkit on our side to help anywhere along that user path where we can plug in and say, here is some low hanging fruit. Like
Mm-hmm.
immediately, you need to plug this hole and this hole, and things will
Mm-hmm.
start to flow. And once we have a
Mm-hmm.
baseline, then maybe we talk about blowing up the website and
Yeah.
having that, tool functioning better for you. But there's 99% of the time much lower hanging fruit, much more going on with the business
Mm-hmm.
than this thing that they want to replace that they think is going to all of a sudden, increase their revenue by 10, 20, whatever percent over the
Right.
next year. But those are
Yeah.
fun conversations for me because
Yeah, yeah, me too. And I'm not talking about building websites, but I mean it's a similar concept in that I feel like there's a little bit of like counseling effect that has to happen where you have to ask them good questions. You have to be open to listening, and you have to let them have a space where they can kind of talk out what they want to do. And good questions help them get to the answers that they really have in their brain somewhere, but they just haven't had time to sit and think about it. And they're going to love somebody who says, "Oh no, you don't need to spend 50 grand on a new website. What you need to do is correct this form and give it 3 weeks and see if that fixes part of your problem, and then we can build off of that, and that didn't cost you anything, right? You
absolutely. And then come back and talk to me.
Because
Or
eventually
sometimes we're
they're going
just
to
not
need
a
a
good
website,
fit.
right? I mean, eventually they're going to need more work, right? But and they may need it right away, but this sort of like consultative, but it's like um, you're sort of problem solving for them,
I like that you
and
call it counseling. I think I'm going to call it like sales and marketing therapy instead of
yeah, therapy,
instead of
therapy,
your initial consultation with Amanda. It's just going to be like sales and
yeah.
marketing therapy.
It could easily go down that road. You could easily spend hours with someone and they would give it to you, I mean, there's definitely a line in the sand you have to draw, but I think what you're also doing in that time that I found is if you're uncovering the real need, you're able to demonstrate that what they could potentially need because you've done it before. You've turned this rock over before, either you or your team.
Right.
And I love that because I'm all about not only for myself, but advising my clients to demonstrate expertise, right? That's what people really want to see. They can look at your LinkedIn, they can look at your website, they can watch your video. All the social proof is there. Credibility is built. If they get referred by somebody, even better. The trust is probably mostly there because now they just have the need they want to talk about. But if you can demonstrate your expertise by, like in your case, saying, okay, well, you talked about something, rebuilding this section of the website, but it seems like this page might just be broken. So if we fix this, what we did for another client is we just fixed the page and it worked. So, let me tell you about what we did there. And you insert that sort of mini case study. You're demonstrating that, hey, I've already walked this path before. I'm critical time with you right now, helping you uncover the need. All of the things are there for them to say, yes, we need to continue down the road with you. And you're building value for them in their company, and you're building value for you in your business. I love it.
It's fun.
It really is. It is fun. And I think, one thing you said before that I think is really important is getting comfortable with that silence. There's a lot of like deep psychology in that because, why are people not comfortable with silence? Well, because it's like, we're working here. We need to be productive. I need to make money. I need to like move this along. What's the next step, right?
And I think people worry that they don't seem smart if they don't have the answer right away. And I'm more of a thinker. And so I think maybe it comes more natural to me, but I'll take a minute and think through something before I say it. And I feel like when I do that, it's much more meaningful. It's much more thought through.
Yes.
I've become accustomed because I work with a lot of people who are quick on their feet and would get nervous when I wouldn't answer right away, to just say, just let me think it through a second, so that they know that I'm not avoiding the question. It's not that I don't have an answer. I just want to make sure that I'm being thoughtful and thorough, when I give my answer.
Yeah. I agree completely. I think for some personalities, it's a little easier than others. I've kind of been all over the map, I think, in my career, but working on sales teams and working on marketing teams, you see that there are certain people who have much more trouble holding their tongue and like not saying everything that comes to mind. And some people who don't say enough. So I think there is a little bit of a skill that has to be exercised or worked on for certain people, both sides of the coin. But I think that skill is super important for all levels and for all disciplines. I mean, if you're sitting in a performance review and you're not client facing with your manager, probably a good time to know how to use that skill of, do I say what came to mind and, tell this person what I really think, or should I just wait and maybe, be a little bit more choice with my words? I think it's an incredible skill. It's not just for sales.
And not accepting a yes or a no as an answer. I think sometimes we're trying to get through our checklist so quickly, like, okay, I need to know this. I need to know what's the timeline, what's the budget, what's their need, like what's their goal, but not having to like race through, all those things and have them say yes or no, but then say, tell me about that.
Yeah. When you said it earlier, it pinged in my mind because, my wife and I, over the last couple of years, we've had this like running joke where she picks up these little phrases that I use in business and she'll try to use them against me.
Oh, no.
And one of them is tell me more. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we got into a conversation one day and I was like, yeah, if you just, not like you're trying to do it in a negative way. Again, if you're just really trying to get something out of someone and get to the real like heart of it, to find the value and move things in a progressive way, you just ask them to say, well, tell me more about that. And that gets people to say, oh, well, maybe I didn't communicate it clearly, or maybe there's more to be said. And then they'll say more. They may say it in a different way. And there's more clarity there.
I learned more about the interpersonal dynamics of other companies by asking them to, tell me more about that. What's really going on?
Yeah.
Like, that seems like...
And then be quiet.
Yeah, and then listen.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I love it. Well, so, what it makes me think about is we're talking about business development and this sort of consultative sales approach through, we don't have to get into the details of the funnel, but like assuming that this prospect has come into the funnel and we work with them to understand their needs and really put together a scope of work that's going to help, satisfy those needs. Let's talk a little bit about like customer success, like taking it from, I know you probably deal with this a lot, where you're dealing with a new prospect, you're turning them into a client. Now you have to hand them off to your team to, fulfill. What does that look like with your agency, and how do you approach, that successful handoff so that whomever you're handing it off to is actually going to fulfill all of the things that you've promised?
Yeah, so that's actually interesting that you asked that, because it has been refined and refined
Mm-hmm.
over several years. So I take very thorough notes and put them in my CRM so that they're
There you
there.
go.
And
Okay.
I tag our project manager or whomever I know will be working on the account so that they're
Mm-hmm.
there and they can read them or not beforehand. But everything's in there for them to see.
Mm-hmm.
And after we have a completed statement of work, then I meet with the project manager and we just walk through what exactly is it I sold, because we
Mm-hmm.
sell similar things, right? But there's nuances to everybody. And we really
Yeah.
talk through not just the project, but then the people side of it too, because they're going to be in charge of managing the relationship, making sure that we're hitting
Mm-hmm.
milestones, making sure that our team understands what's important to this client, because what's important to, client A may not be important to client B. And so when they're having conversations after the handoff, they're already aware, like, we know that this was really important to you, and so we're going to spend a little more time here, or let's talk about that
Yeah.
more at the client kickoff. So I have a one-on-one with the project manager to kind of do that high-level handoff, and we start to schedule out all the work. And then we have a second meeting with our team. So then it's me, the project manager, and then any of the team who's working on the project. And that's really the time to say, what haven't I asked yet? What am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need to do your job well? Are there any roadblocks? Here's the schedule for when we see this work being completed.
Mm-hmm.
How can we make sure that we're prepared to do this work well for the client? And then we go through, our designers, our developers, our people who are working on our HubSpot automations, our copywriters, and everybody gets to say, hey, Amanda, it'd be really nice if they gave us this in advance, or, they sent over this thing. Can we get another one of those? Or who should our technical connection be for this part? And taking all of that information, and then as we're getting ready to do our client kickoff meeting, we send over our questions in advance. And then in our slide deck, when we have that first, it'll be my team and me handing off and meeting with the client. And then I cover the first part of reiterating, here's what we sold,
Mm-hmm.
here's what that looks like, me and my team, here's what we do. But then we have a slide of unknowns or things that we're still waiting on. And all of that comes from having really good communication with my team, and them also trusting and being comfortable to tell me, like, hey, you didn't ask this question, or it's great that they have, 3 kids and they're going on vacation next week, but we need access to this file, Amanda. I'm like, oh, shoot. Yeah, let me get that for you. But having a process in place that asks the questions up front. And originally, when I came into this role and started, I had never worked in sales before. I had never worked in marketing before. And so everything was brand new. And so through doing it, I kept asking questions. And that's really where I learned what needs to be in the process to ask the right questions. And then even when you think you've asked all the right questions, there's still probably something missing.
Yes. Well, I love that you are so thorough. And I would say, from my experience, it seems more thorough than most agencies. I think a lot of agencies are so quickly moving on to the next sale that they're just throwing their projects to people, and people in the back room are like, yet again, I have no idea what we're doing.
But that's where you get those inefficiencies. So when we look at the team and we say, okay, we quoted this work, why are we over budget, or why are we, why are the profit margins not there? How are other agencies doing this work and able to make money and have, high level employees? This is not an industry with, minimum wage employees. We have very skilled, talented staff. and we
Yeah.
need to make sure that we keep them, which means that we need to make sure that we get the work through and we don't go over budget, that we
Yeah.
do valuable work for our clients, but that we're also very mindful that
Hmm.
our hours need to be spent on the work and it needs to get done. And how can I do my
Yeah.
part to make sure that they have what they need so that they can stay on time?
It's critical. And to ask your question, I know it's a rhetorical question, but those agencies aren't making any money. I'm going to tell you that right now. They may have a lot of clients come through the door, but ask those clients what that experience is like. It's just not good, which is back to the beginning of what we're talking about. There's a lot of bad actors and bad use cases out there.
And
Just
our bread and butter clients are those who have already been on HubSpot for a while, and
okay.
they've grown and they know now they need help, right? They're
Yeah.
like, we like the software, we just need to do more with it. Like, we're expanding into this area, or we're launching this new product, and so we always get those horror stories.
Yeah. So are you talking about these are customers who started on it themselves internally and now they need help externally, or they've had help externally?
Either way, either they've got someone internally who, got it up and running and it's kind of doing its thing, but they know that it could be doing so much more and they just don't have the capacity. Or somebody who's been working with another agency and they're just not getting what they need through, or there's a disconnect there. And so then that's typically where we like to take them under our wing and bring them through the MINDSCAPE process, because we try we really value customer experience, and that's what we try to make sure that we do a really good job. I know everyone says customer experience, right? I hate even saying it, but there's a big difference in the industry between getting work in and pushing it through and actually building a relationship with your clients and understanding their business needs and taking pride internally when your clients succeed. So every Wednesday we have our monthly stand-up meeting, and we do client wins and team wins. And so everyone on our team talks about who are we working with and what cool thing is going on. Like, what do we do for them?
Great.
Because that gets everyone excited to actually come to work every day. Nobody wants to just punch the clock, in and out every day. But if we can talk about hey, we did this landing page that we were testing and here's what we saw, it made a huge difference. Or we did this email campaign. So a lot of our clients don't utilize email like they should. They want more leads. They want us to run them through their website. And then we look at their database and we're like, what are you doing with all the contacts you already have? You realize that's your most valuable asset, to your point of referrals and people who already know and love you. So then we run email campaigns and we're like, holy cow, look what's going on. Our clients are excited and it was an easy lift.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're right about all that. I think that, the point you made earlier about getting to know the person of the prospect, you may have multiple buyers that are buying at the same time, but getting to know them and their needs, but on a human level, and then translating that to your team is huge. I mean, well, first of all, honestly, in reality, the fact that you're having a team meeting and trying to actually communicate what was sold to them is huge. But the fact that you're bringing all this other context to the picture, and then they're taking the baton and saying, okay, we're going to run with this on a customer success side and try to deliver as accurately and even maybe beyond what it is that you proposed, then you're going to end up with a happy client. And it's not only just happy now, but they're going to want to be with you and do more things with you for a long time. So that cost of acquisition, goes down and down and down. I think there's so much to learn from. The other thing I was going to say too is I think there's something to having lots of efficiencies in your business and trying to build a machine of sorts for both marketing and sales, because operationally you need to have that be strong and sound. But even if you built it into it sort of in a mechanized way, those stand-up monthly meetings are very important because it allows everyone to get out of that mindset, a machine mindset, and really look at things objectively and say, are we actually doing something here? Because we can do this stuff, especially when it comes to CRM, automation, email marketing, all these things become rote. they just become, this is what we do every week, and I owe it to this person. If I don't get it there by this time, it's, that becomes our life. And if you don't pull yourself out of that every once in a while and say, are we making progress internally as a team, as a company, with our clients? And here's what those wins are. It's really easy for people to get burnt out as a team. And it's easy to get your clients to say, hey, we've been doing this for like 6 months and like there's some progress, but like, are we going to, are there any other new ideas? Like we just keep pounding the same nail, so I love that you guys do that, and you make it a point to pull those out and be intentional about that, because it can be super hard, because everybody's, we're always behind to some extent, or always a lot going on. It can be hard to pull out and say, let's just have this conversation about more feel good things.
It's nice too for sales conversations also, because then I have top of mind things all the time that are going on. And so when people are talking about, whatever tactic they're looking for, and I can say, oh, that's funny that you should mention that. Just last week, Wednesday, we were talking about this client, and they had that same issue, and we've been working with them now for 3 months, and here's what we did, where we're at.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's another thing that you're doing that, sometimes it's like you go to an event and you need to be off your phone because you just need to be present at the event. Oh, can you not hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I can hear you, I think. Oh, it must have been the AirPods. Are your AirPods disconnected now?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Sorry about that. I don't know why my audio.
No, that's okay. No, that's okay. But now I hear me on the other end. It's like an echo. You have it on your computer speakers? How about now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
That was bizarre. Sorry.
Are you back? Yeah. It's Bluetooth. It's the wonders of technology. It loves to set us up for great success and then pull it right out from under us.
I think it's a good lead into, though, that you rely on the best laid plans, whatever, don't always work out.
That's right. Well, I had a point there. Now it sort of left me, but doesn't matter. This has been a great conversation, by the way. I knew it was going to be anybody that Dan recommends. I'm all excited to talk with and talk about what they're doing. If everybody wants to follow, I'm going to put some links in the description, but if people want to follow you or find you, what's the best place for them to do that?
So the company is on, obviously, all of the social medias. We are MINDSCAPE.com is the website, and then the company name is MINDSCAPE. And then, of course, you can follow me, Amanda Brand, and I am also, probably more on LinkedIn professionally. You can follow me there.
Cool. All right. Hey, thanks again for this. It's been great. And I'd love to continue talking with you at another time, about this topic of business development, customer success. Seems like you guys have a lot of it figured out, and, extending that value to other listeners far and wide is what this is all about. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you again for having me.